NAC is back, baby. NAC is back. We only got 3 NAC members on the call today. David, rest his soul, is pitching. He's doing the hard work. He's in Series David mode, and we're sending him a bunch of love from the Cartel cast here, but he is sorely missed. He's sorely missed.
It's all good. It's all good. There's a good energy on this call.
He'll be back next week, firing, but we'll miss him. We'll miss him.
How we feeling, guys? How we feeling? Quick sanity check.
Good. You know, markets are back. I think last episode we were recording and we were just getting a little tip of the iceberg, and it seems like the momentum is cruising for ETH in the market as a whole. I think whether or not we're actually back is another question and maybe up for debate here, but I think feeling good. It doesn't hurt to see green.
Does not hurt to see green. I sold some tokens to cash this weekend. That felt pretty good. You know, I think that the energy of the green candle was great, but I'm not trying to get too bought into it. I wanted to be realistic about a lot of the old tokens I have that probably aren't coming back, but the reversals were nice to see. I don't think that all the tokens are going to go to all-time highs though. So I will say my emotions are a little bit mixed going into this Monday here. I'm really excited for some of the events that we got lined up this week. So big Skrillex Red Rocks concert on Tuesday. For those who don't know, Skrillex is, in my opinion, the GOAT of electronic music. So as an analogy, you got LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. You got Skrillex in electronic music. So I went to his last Red Rocks show a couple of years ago. I played a 5-hour set. He's playing a 5-hour set again tomorrow.
Wow.
One of the best shows of my life. So the way I view this is it's kind of like the NBA championship, but for electronic music at my favorite venue in the world. So
wow,
I'm really looking forward to that. We got the One Confirmation Summit coming up on Thursday, which we'll get into. And then we got EDC Vegas this weekend, which is debatably the largest electronic festival in the United States. So we got a bunch of artists playing that. Going to be out there all weekend. Should be a good time.
I love it, Coop. I think, one thing that stands out to me is you're spending a lot of time on the road right now, going to a lot of concerts. You're obviously running a record label, but what to you is like the pitch right now on why you're spending all these times at the concerts? Is it just like boots on the ground is the best ROI of your time, or what's the game plan for you guys at like Coop Records and why you're so present at all these kind of big concerts and festivals?
That's the target market. I get a lot of value out of basically going to these new places I've never been, and people ask me what I do, and I explain that I run a crypto record label, and then I have to talk to people about what it is, how it works, why we do what we do. And so whether it's like fans who are at the concert, it's artists that are opening for the shows, it's the promoters who are running the venues, it's kind of just building familiarity and just like expanding my network. And on a personal level, I personally like to be able to see who are the promoters and the clubs that are booking our artists and all the developing artists in these markets. So as we start to scale and go our roster, we now have an ongoing relationship where, let's say Daniel plays this club in Nashville, and then the club in Nashville is trying to book another 2 or 3 of our artists. I can kind of be the connective tissues that's like, hey, I've been there. I can vouch for these guys. They're doing a good job. And over time, just kind of build that trust within all these different places around the US.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I guess it's like, BD for new and existing or new artists and new like collectors or users or supporters of Coop Records. And then also just like industry networking of making sure your artists can get booked and kind of helping them on that front.
Yeah.
What is it going to take to bring Skrillex on chain?
Yeah, there we go. That's a good question.
I have no clue, to be honest with you. I will say that internally, that's like our team's North Star is if we are able to get a Skrillex track on chain, that's how we know that we've really made it, because that's like the holy grail of electronic music, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Love
that. But what that looks like, I don't know. I did mention, though, I do have some mixed emotions going into today. I was doing a lot of reflecting yesterday. Sundays are kind of like the weekly catch up to plan for the week and whatnot. And I was just thinking that kind of a big statement here, but I feel like I've kind of hit a ceiling in terms of like the local crypto native distribution with like additions and running campaigns and stuff like that. And, doing the layer 3 boosts, galaxies of the world. Obviously it's not finite in terms of like there's a fixed amount of collectors and we reach all of them. I just feel like the playbooks that we're using feel a little bit stale to me at this point. And so my emotions going into this week was like, we're kind of in this make or break period where all those same users that I talked about at concerts are our target audience. We're obviously not really tapping into them right now, but I do think that there's like an evolution that's happening internally in my mind that we kind of need to grow up and go to our next chapter to be able to reach the next leg of our business. And it's scary to me because we have our pitch so dialed for the artists that we work with, where we upload a song for them, they make $1,000, we get on a call, we're like, here's $1,000, here's access to this wallet that we made for you, we can cash that out to dollars for you. Artists love it, but I don't see a clear path right now to like an artist making $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 on our current playbook. And so it's kind of causing me to take a step back and reflect on like, how do we get to that next level of growth that allows us to be a product and a business in the space that's taken seriously and has some like real exponential possibilities associated with it.
How many unique wallets has Coop Records touched?
Good question. I haven't checked in a while, but I'd probably say like 150,000, somewhere around there.
That's really small in the grand scheme of things, and makes me think like actually we haven't utilized the playbook fully, and we haven't really figured out how to properly reach its full potential. And I say that comparing it to an abstract launch, for example, as they hype up their go-to-market and all the users that bridge to abstract and go through the quests and the campaigns to follow, to join the Discord, to stay in tune with what's happening, to join the products and interact with the products in those ecosystems. So I actually think we're doing something wrong with our model, and we haven't actually utilized it fully. In that we have been using only one avenue to reach these users, and we haven't actually explored other avenues, because apparently there's millions and millions of addresses on chain, and we're already creeping up and doing the things that stimulate activity for the minds of these people from a speculative point of view or from a degenerate point of view. So I would go against what you just said. I say actually we're not doing enough with the current market of crypto, but I would agree that the people that you're trying to get to enjoy the music, not just be degenerate with the music, those people are not fully here. I think another market that we need to explore as a group collectively is the WorldCoin market, and to figure out how to tap into all the quote unquote real users that are over there, because there's a lot of them. And sometimes I see random stats on Twitter of like people building for the WorldCoin ecosystem and them getting a rush of users by doing so. So I actually don't think we tapped into it enough, frankly. It might be a hot take, but yeah.
I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's pretty accurate. I think the question is, are those the users that you want to be driving the daily usage of your app and your ecosystem, you know? And one thing I struggle with a lot is whenever we onboard an artist and we have that call with them to get them into their wallet, they're like, okay, who's buying these things? And like, who's this community that you've developed and whatnot? And I show them our quest on layer 3, and I show them our campaigns on Boost and whatnot. And I show them our Warpcast and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, so all these people must really love music, right? Like they must really love my music. And the fact that I've had 3,000 collectors, like that's 3,000 people who probably like listen to my song, right? And I have to be very like straight faced with them and just be like, no, they're actually mostly just collecting because they want a reward, and they're buying into the vision of the platform, and they're buying into the idea of getting ownership with it and whatnot. And so it's somewhat humbling in the sense that the outcome is respected. Like the idea that this artist is getting paid for putting their music out on chain is definitely recognized. But if I'm being truthful with myself, it's not like it's real music fans who are the vast majority of the revenue that's coming in. And so it really makes me feel like, you know, we need to get real about that at some point and figure out how do we actually start to tap in with music fans and not just like farmers and airdrop people, etc.
Yeah, I feel like we've been on this mission for a while, Coop, or at least you have, on like how do you get one-to-one on like streams to collects, or like how do you kind of like bring that closer to parity? And as a side note, I apologize for my mic. I thought we figured this out, but it switched on me, so we're just gonna run it. But I do think it is, it's been a quest for years now, Coop. I think that was kind of like one of the original visions or theses around, you know, on-chain music is how can you like tap into all the streams and how do you like monetize those on a better basis with the people that love the music, you know?
Yeah.
And it's still an open question. And I think, we have a lot to explore there.
I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole because I feel like we go down it a lot here, but in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm almost being pushed into the coins chapter of crypto right now. And what I mean by that is like the way to get tokens to new people is probably through allowing them to earn it as, you know, rewards for being able to consume the content. And I think right now our current playbook is like buy something and then get a reward in return. And I think where I want to start to get to with our product in the future is like just earn something for consumptive behavior without any capital being spent on it. And so that coupled with the idea of like, how do we get this viral X factor of there's a world where an artist makes $100,000 on a track. I don't know how to replicate that in our current playbook running these quests and whatnot. I think for a moment in time, we were kind of experiencing that with the uncapped quest and with like Onchain Summer and some of these like avenues that were available. I think a lot of those channels have kind of died out, and the only existing avenue now is like to go and partner with another chain and do like a big launch with another chain where you get that fresh audience to come in. But that's more of like a one-off example. It's not like that's something that I think can be, replicated on an active basis. And so the foundation that I'm basically thinking about is how do I create an ecosystem where there's a potential for an artist to make way more money than they expected by chance or by circumstance of their track actually going viral, and not by the amount of capital we're deploying on our end as a campaign, but by virtue of there being like this belief that these, tokens, songs, whatever you want to call them, have demand from both crypto natives and from fans in an ideal world.
I think Coop Records needs to do a physical pop-up one day. Once you guys have a big enough catalog, use WorldCoin as a point of inspo. And I mean, we've all been talking about like the best way to get somebody into crypto is by helping them earn crypto. And I think WorldCoin is the the perfect example of modeling that. And maybe the incentive amount differs based off where that user is geographically, because definitely a $2 incentive to scan your iris is not going to be enticing for somebody in the US. So they have to give them $100 plus or something. But at the end of the day, it's just the underlying artificial token that they created to generate that value. And I feel like at some point, I don't know, I think back to like the early days of Coop Records throwing events, and you had the IYK disc or puck that you were onboarding people with, and giving them POAPs for joining. And I feel like at some point you'll having a physical pop-up and like creating like a record label type of experience. And once you have a big enough catalog, like doing some sort of like IRL URL experience could be really compelling in doing so. And then it brings me back to like, you're going to all these concerts. Like, I feel like you should still have that puck with you and help
Let me
people
tell
earn.
you, Chevy, we got the puck.
Let's go.
So
Let's
IYK
go.
actually reoriented their entire business to be a music company now. And so they're really doubling down on their like show check-in experience. And so they did it for Disturbed, and they did it for Slandered's Festival and Tate McRae and a couple others. And all of Daniel's shows now have IYK check-in booths at them where you tap the puck to check in. Or in Nashville, we just hung up like flyers, and it basically says scan this QR code to get a version of the set. And so I actually think that that's like the more financially viable way of doing these IRL things, is like using a partner like IYK to basically check in at the show. What we found from our Midnight Diner events was that they were like really high impact amongst the 300 people that would come to them, but they were not very they're not financially viable. Like we were putting 15, 20, 25 grand into throwing these pop-ups into shows in LA. And obviously there's bells and whistles with that. You get free drinks and free food and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think for us, it just came down to like, we can't afford to just throw an event for 25 grand every month, even if we do end up booking a great artist, because people would come to the event. We would make them sign into Coop Records and download our app to be able to like get into the show, but then they wouldn't come back because there wasn't a deep enough experience for them to like want to be bought into. Their only touch point would be like when they come to the next Midnight Diner, they'd be like, hey, I'm checking in with the same wallet I set up from the last one. So the point's definitely super noted. I just think that I'm trying to figure out how do we do it in a way that's like replicable and doesn't burn the bank by having to throw down so much every time.
Yeah, I think the thing that stuck with me there, Coop, and it's definitely not helping to burn the bank, but it's the fact that with coins you can actually just issue like a dollar-based reward, right, to people for either listening to the song or like being there in person. And that to me feels like a much stronger or unique angle that's not really possible with an NFT, because in the best case you can just like airdrop that NFT to the user, but it doesn't really have that same like, oh, it's worth $5, I can sell it instantly. And maybe that's one of those like leg ups that the coins have. I think on the other side of it, I just don't think it'll help you get more people to support the artists that are fans of the artist. Like you're just going to still deal with the same speculative crowd, I think, that are actually buying and paying for the coins. So I think that's still like maybe an open piece of that equation.
Unless you're building a loyalty program on behalf of the artist itself and onboarding their existing users and distributing tokens that are branded in their name, and there's experiences to create post claiming. Hot take again, maybe.
I will say it's very interesting trying to explain these crypto topics to people who don't care about it. Like when I go to shows with friends, they're like, "What's going on in your world?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm having this big debate about like additions versus coins," and like I'm trying to explain coins to them and like what it is. Like I don't fucking understand what that is, and I'm like, "Oh, but it has like a market cap." Like I don't know what that is, and so it just
Yeah.
like it's definitely like breaking me to my core. Where I feel like when I come on this podcast and I'm on Warpcast and Twitter and whatnot, it's like this entirely different set of nomenclature that like does not resonate at all with real people. And so I don't know. That's why I guess my feelings are mixed because I see ETH's up like, 20%, 30%. Like this is great. But the reality is that doesn't really help me achieve my mission in a similar way to you guys, where I think it's like there's now this separation happening between like core crypto price action and like the actual outcomes that I think all of us are looking for here.
Yeah. I mean, I was just pitching like a normal Web 2 podcast today. And like the thing that I was just saying was, look, you can support your favorite podcast and you get a fancy receipt in return. And that through those receipts, you build like a leaderboard of your biggest fans. And like she has no crypto kind of exposure. And that kind of clicked with her, you know? And I think that's really all it is like you build a social graph of your fans. It's direct patronage. It's like a patronage plus model. And that seems pretty easy to pitch to like normal people. Now the fan, this is like on the creator perspective. On the fans perspective, it's definitely going to be a little bit of a different like pitch or just like trying to actually get them to pay. But there was something there, like I just wasn't using any crypto nomenclature. There was no market cap. There was like I was trying to avoid NFTs. I was really just saying like, look, you get new distribution because there's a whole new host of applications that are surfacing this type of content. And then you get a bit direct to fan patronage model where you get to understand the individuals behind your audience, and like that largely clicks with the creator side. I still think that there's work to do on the collector or like supporter side. um that said, on the other side of it, I've just had a lot of success with the pay-per-view pitch, and like I almost 100% hit rate with any normie. Like it's not really hard for them to understand it. It's pretty easy for them to onboard. Now getting them to pay again is like another different hoop that I haven't really tried to push for, but the like the why collect thing there is answered very directly or very opinionated in the sense of like you unlock that piece of content and you get to view it, and if you don't collect it, quote unquote, you don't get to view it. And it's all like dollar-based payments. Sign in with Twitter, sign in with Warpcast, which is obviously not ideal for normies. But as a whole, like, yeah, I definitely feel like in a separate arena when I'm pitching pay-per-view, and then, also kind of back into the normal camp that we're all in when I'm pitching pods, but really trying to take a step back and just be like, what is the value prop for the creator here?
Can I make a quick side comment there?
Yeah.
I feel like I made this point before, but I don't like the orientation of the word like normies anymore. I feel like it's like
Yeah.
kind of very and I know that you're not saying that in like a condescending way or anything, but I think we as an industry have used that term to describe anyone who's not currently into crypto. But I think it doesn't do justice to the fact that like getting a real person to spend money using your app doesn't make them a normie. That just makes them like a real user. You know what I mean? And I feel like in a lot of ways we've almost grown too accustomed to the belief and expectations that crypto people have that we're kind of, I don't know, like the archetype feels like it almost gets like downplayed in a sense or something like that, but it's actually like should be on a pedestal. It shouldn't be like below crypto native. I think that the real user is like the prized
100%.
user who should be
100%.
prioritizing these flows,
I agree with that.
Speaking of onboarding, speaking of market, we have the One Confirmation Summit happening, Thursday? I'll pull up the agenda really quick just to touch upon this. Let's see.
The boys are headed to Tahoe. My second time out there. Shout out Nick Tomeno, one of the most beautiful homes I've ever been to. Basketball court in the basement with an ETH logo on it.
Oh, sick.
I mean, talk about bucket list items right there, huh?
So good. So good. What was it? How long ago? 3 months ago, 4 months ago, he hosted a summit over there as well. Me, you, and a few others from the Farcaster community went. And
Bro, 3-4 months ago, that was a year and a half ago.
I was about to say,
what?
Like, how long ago?
Classic Adam and his like rabbit hole. He was like 3-4 months ago, bro.
That was
so
not
long ago. It was
Bro,
easily
really?
over a year ago. I promise.
It had to be last year for
Dude,
sure.
I'm losing track of time here.
At
A year
best,
and a half ago.
best, Chevy, it was last summer. All right, so we're looking at like 9 months.
Fuck. Well, 9 months ago.
I didn't even go. So like, grain of salt over here. But
I digress. I think the takeaway here is that I was surprised to see Cosmos on the lineup. I really don't know much about the Cosmos ecosystem, but really cool to see other heavy hitters. Coop, you'll be speaking there from what it seems, or you're doing a demo from what it seems, or what's going on?
15-minute interactive demo. The Coop team has been hard at work on our new mobile onboarding flow. So everyone here is going to sign up with an email, get a username. They're going to get a wallet funded with some credits in it, and they're going to be able to follow 3 artists and collect about 5 to 10 songs, all with no mention of crypto and all without having to fund a wallet. So a lot of stuff's been cooking there. It's the first time we're going to kind of debut it to people. And so my hope is that this is the first step towards having a product that we can actually give to real people and start to really beta test this thing in the wild.
what is the what's the pitch on why collect for those normal people that are going to be onboarding?
For like the people at the summit or for regular people?
I think people at the summit, and then more broadly beyond that.
At the summit, I think it's actually more of a presentation to LPs that are there of like, here's a next generation crypto mobile app that allows you to do stuff in crypto without knowing that you are using crypto. That's a very tailored audience. When you take it to real people, the download or the pitch that I give them is basically that you get a limited edition of the song. It's only 5,000 available. So you're buying into a limited supply. You get a download of the song, and then you get exposure to the full catalog and the record label. So it's not like it's that much different. Truthfully, I don't love that as like the end all be all pitch, but I think this is what I was saying before of like, this is where we need to get this user feedback is like sell that to people, have them roast it, say what's wrong with it, and then just like refine the product from there. And I think for me, it's more about just getting to par with a lot of the other mobile apps where it's, I mean, you have this pay-per-view, right? It's like sign up without anything about crypto, be able to do one-click collect, don't need to fund your wallet with ETH, and then basically just like listen, learn, and adapt from there.
Yeah. Wait, so is this going to be a full iOS mobile app, or is this just like a web kind of app that has a very tailored mobile experience, or is this a mini app? Like, what is the actual?
So it's on browser to start, just cooprecords.xyz. We're going to be using something called Capacitor to be able to take that web experience and put it into the App Store. So the sequence is like it starts on cooprecords.xyz. When we have that in like a pretty solid place, you kind of freeze the, browser version and then submit that to the App Store as your iOS app.
Interesting. You should send me that link. I would be interested in exploring that.
Yeah, I got you. But I mean, there's a lot of nuance there. Like we're exploring cross-mint for Apple Pay checkout and whatnot. And I'm just learning all these nuances. Like to get Apple Pay checkout with cross-mint, you need to have their like $400 a month tier. It's just like there's so much nuance when you start to get in the weeds on this stuff. But I feel like that's how I know that we're starting to make like real ground here.
That's maybe one of the nice things about the NFT models. You have that cross-mint Apple Pay, which I believe works only for the NFTs. I don't know about the coins yet. Maybe it actually works with the coins too.
It's both.
It's both. Yeah. We're definitely interested in exploring that, but like also, like you said, $400, you have to be pretty confident that you're going to make up that money in Apple Pay revenue, and
which is very hard to be confident in this day and age,
One. Does Apple take their marketplace fee on that?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So you really got to be juicing some numbers there.
There was a story recently that Apple is going to be getting rid of their fee, but my understanding is that only works if you push someone out to a new window within your app. And there's kind of like this whole nuance that would make it not convenient on like the UX side. So I think that most people are just going to still have to bite the bullet on it moving forward. Mm-hmm. But I will say I'm very inspired by the idea of like having a mobile app in iOS that I can go and like actually try and get people to use and learn from that. Like that feels like that is really the cutting edge that I'm not going to say that we're by any means like early to. There's a lot of people that are in this ballpark, but really not that many consumer apps that are in the iOS store that you can go.
Well, I think historically it's been really difficult for crypto apps to get listed in the App Store. Now, I think part of kind of what that announcement was is it's going to be a little bit easier at least. And then, I would agree. I think Nikita Beer would say if you're not in the App Store, you're dead, in the consumer arena. So we very much have taken that to heart. I think the hard part, especially for pods, pay-per-view maybe is a separate question, is we're not really optimizing for the podcast player. We're really optimizing for bringing the podcast on-chain as like a on-chain hosting provider. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely like if we're in an app store with an iOS, a pods app, it's like that is almost a player because people don't upload their podcasts, from their iPhone. That's just not
Yeah.
really the consumer behavior that exists. So it's a weird or just a weird kind of balance for us to figure out on like how do we drive more collecting activity, but also, it doesn't really make sense for us to over index on the iOS app on the pods front right now.
I would just do pay-per-view on iOS if I was you.
Yeah, I think that one's
Mhm.
pretty straightforward. We're just kind of continuing to iterate, get the code base in a really good spot. I think there's a lot of work to do there before we're ready for the iOS side of stuff, but definitely on the docket, assuming growth in numbers and all that stuff keeps up.
Hmm. You've been pretty big down the mini app rabbit hole too. I know that we talked about this last week, but
Yeah.
I said in our chat today I got two notifications from pods and pay-per-view, and you guys are really just doubling down on there. You have like a pretty deep Farcaster integration. I
Yeah.
think that to kind of pose it as a question, building your mini app is like kind of a separate engineering path that's almost
Mhm.
not one-to-one with iOS in a lot of ways. Like you're kind of building for this custom tailored world of like Farcaster, Coinbase Wallet, etc. What's been your experience like going so hard on the mini app side of things?
I think right now with Farcaster and Coinbase that there's opportunity or at least surface area in the future for distribution. But I think actually the
Mm-hmm.
more important piece, Coop, is really it's kind of the testing ground for the iOS app, right? You can start to figure out the mechanisms. With pay-per-view, we just shipped real-time notifications for whenever you earn or whenever someone you've already viewed a post from just post a new one. So you kind of have automated earnings right now. And it's really just like we could build this as an iOS app, and then once
Right.
we're ready and we feel really comfortable with it, that migration path is a lot easier because you have all those kind of like basic mechanisms with the notification system and all that stuff in place. And it allows us to bootstrap the network with more activity and more content without sacrificing when we go to an iOS app, right? Because
Right.
if we do ship that iOS app, the mini app's still there. People are still posting. People are still collecting. If those user base 10x's or 100x's, we still have that surface area to capitalize on. And it also just funnels right into the iOS app activity and
Mm-hmm.
all the content that's on there. So it's really kind of just this initial testing ground for us to figure out, one, is this going to work? Two, it allows us to build like these behaviors or like mechanisms that are very similar or identical in the iOS app. And then three, if that all works out, it just makes it a pretty straightforward process because, the UI, the UX is all pretty much the exact same,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. It's just a full iOS app that we have to go through that Apple listing app store process, which is probably more of a nightmare.
Definitely been getting a lot of love with like I saw Linda did a little interview with you, and there's like a Compass spotlight, a pay-per-view and stuff like that. I think I saw David from Base maybe shouted you guys out. So kudos on getting some good shouts from the crypto community.
It's definitely, I think, the highest ROI right now for any consumer founder or application without having to go full balls to the wall on the iOS app. Like
Yep.
you're kind of getting that happy medium right now. And my expectation is also just like I want to be prepared if Farcaster blows up again and like starts having 100x users come on board. That's on them to figure out, but at least we have the surface area to capitalize as like one of the trending apps or one of the top apps.
How would
Um,
that happen? Hypothetically speaking, like what would it take for something like Farcaster to start getting like a ton of new users again?
that is a question of which I am not paid to think about right now.
Hmm.
I think Dan and the team need to figure out a way on how to pay creators more
Hmm.
Yeah,
effectively.
I do think
Um,
I think Adam's right on that. Like it is
yeah.
just like Twitter, but you have way higher earnings potential,
Even
right?
though people on Twitter don't do things necessarily for the pay, a lot of them are surprised they even get paid, and it's a nice cherry on top. But I think the content feed gets them there, the distribution keeps them, and then the cherry on top is paying them
Right.
for their engagement. So I think I really like how the team has been leaning into more visual elements of like you've earned X on Warpcast and it's really shown in your profile, or you have notifications that weekly rewards are going out. Tipping is a really cool one that's native in app. I think experimenting with that and then building case studies around how much creators are earning with like a tenth of the follower count, and then Ted and the team ushering and having like a boots on the ground approach to like literally onboarding the top creators from these networks would be the ultimate strategy, frankly, I think.
It's kind of funny. We all have the same MO in mind, right? Whether it's NFTs or coins or Farcaster on the social side, it's just like who can pay the creators the most.
Right.
Not even
Mhm.
like the creators, like who can just pay like everyone the most, you know? I think that
Mhm.
that's kind of what we're all realizing is like getting the artists and creators paid is like the first rung of the ladder. But unless you're able to satisfy that next rung, which is like the average person who's on the app, you kind of hit a ceiling on it. So it is
Yeah.
fascinating that we're all just kind of in that same domain in some way, shape, or form.
I do think like kind of summarizing what Adam is saying, this to me is like the bull case right here of made $64 this week on Farcaster, and it was through all these just like little apps. And it's like, I think one of the interesting pieces right now is like, it's not, I'm going balls to the wall, like trying to figure out, or like maximize or farm any of these applications. I'm just using them normally and kind of just making, a decent side income or just like a little side hustle from it. And I think if these numbers can 10x, right, then I think you're really in the money. And it's these applications, if they can start making people more money, um, there's no reason not to be on both, at minimum. So maybe that to me, I think in summary with kind of what Adam was saying is the dark horse for Farcaster here.
I don't know if this is the same for real people, but at least my interpretation of that is like I would actually probably rather see less people making $60 a week and like a few people making like $10,000 a week, you know?
Mhm.
I think that's
Mhm.
what we've seen historically with crypto is like that the belief that someone can make $1 million is actually more enticing than a lot of people making a lot less money. It's kind of like the jackpot mentality that
Mhm.
I think everyone wants to play.
I agree with that. And I think it's definitely the thing that makes me bullish about it is that the primitives are there, right? It's just the numbers aren't.
Mm,
And it just takes a little bit more iteration, experimentation. But you know, with like the degen and higher last year, this time, people were making those numbers, right? They were making
yep.
the 10K,
So
100K,
crazy.
$1 million, whatever it was. So it's possible. And I think that's something that, on Twitter, it's just not possible.
Yep.
And I'll also,
Mm,
while we were doing,
debatable.
it's not as baked in that
Yeah,
sense.
true.
Obviously, you can, find a coin that someone tweets about and ape into it, but I think getting that airdrop directly on Twitter is not really the thing that's possible.
Yep.
Um, the other interesting thing that I was just doing while talking there was just looking at the daily active users across X, Blue Sky, and Workcast, and X is at $245 million daily active users. Blue Sky's at 5.2 million, and Farcaster's at 40K. So I just that might seem bearish, but I also just think like if Blue Sky can get 5.2 million, like there's definitely some room to run here, if they can figure out
Yeah.
the formula.
That's crazy how big that gap is though. It's insane. 245 million to 40K is like really puts things into perspective.
Uh-huh.
What do you think Blue Sky's doing right? Has anybody here spent time on Blue Sky?
They just
Nah.
got Jack Dorsey, I think, and I think they have the same ethos as Farcaster, but maybe more Bitcoin oriented. But I haven't spent time on it.
Would you say Warpcast is more left leaning or right leaning or more moderate
I would say everyone's
politically?
pretty moderate, honestly, would be my take.
Yeah, moderate feels good to me.
I think my thing with at least my experience right now with Farcaster is it's like it's pretty open and you're allowed to have whatever opinion without getting the pitchforks within reason.
I've seen a lot of posts on like people getting canceled on Blue Sky and like the community kicking them out because they
Mm,
weren't woke enough.
That's hilarious.
And then X feels way too conservative at times, or Blue Sky feels way too liberal for some people. That's why I'm asking, like, what's the playing ground on Warpcast?
Yeah. I guess tying it back into the creator thing, I did think it was interesting to see that Pump Fund just started to turn on creator revenue sharing, I guess is the way that they framed it.
Is that the first time they've done that?
it just feels
Creators have
crazy.
never earned.
Without selling their tokens. No, I don't think so.
Mm.
So
Shout out
Pump, that's
Zora.
why Pump has just been fucking raking it in because they're just taking all the trading fees.
Damn. Shout out Zora for inspiring that.
Yeah,
Each time
that
someone
was my
trades,
exact thought too.
yeah,
Yeah.
each time someone trades on your coin on Pump Fund, you earn 5 basis points in Sol.
Hmm.
That's way worse than Zora? That's still like 10x off, right? Zora does a 1% fee and splits it 50-50.
I don't know. I think it's the same thing, no? Anyways, I just think it's interesting that Pump's starting to turn on that funnel. And I don't know if it'll have a marginal impact in terms of like the amount of new tokens that are coming out of Pump here, but just kind of another signal to me that the name of the game is all just creator revenue sharing across the board. You look at it, right? It's Pump, it's Zora, it's what we're all doing, it's what Farcaster's doing, it's what Base is doing, it's what Coinbase Wallet is doing.
I mean, that's what Jesse's been saying. You know, everything.
The networks sharing
what
revenue.
Abstract's been doing. Yep.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like we're operating in the right arena for what it's worth. You know,
I agree with that.
It feels like this is, you know, the creator economy cycle, or we're about to kind of hit that momentum. So I feel like shout out to all of us for being positioned.
Yep. You want to pull up this Farouk tweet that you got linked in here?
Yeah, let's do that.
That's the whole ethos of crypto. It's sharing the value with the folks who build the networks. That's literally what it is. Here we go, Farouk.
Yeah, so for those that can't see this, Farouk pretty much replied to Jesse, who was interested in having him coin his interviews and content on Zora or any other platform. Farouk here was just asking, honest question, how do I make money in that case? I would have to coin it, receive tokens, and sell those tokens, right? Which feels very much like he has the pump.fund model in his mind.
Yeah.
And then I think the more interesting part here is then I have to put up with the social perception of dumping tokens from my content on people. So at what point is it worth it? And I think that's maybe where a lot of existing crypto creators get hung up on. Whether or not that's a thing that normally, like, I'm not going to say the word, we'll call it mainstream creators will get hung up on, because I'm actually not sure if they'll be aware of that mechanism. But it is interesting to see that someone that's so deep down the rabbit hole and runs Rug Radio, which is a Web3 media company, is still hesitant on coins.
Yep. I think that the point being here that we definitely need to abstract away the selling of creator tokens for this model to actually have some viability in the long term. I mean, there's been a lot of discussions about it. I haven't seen anyone really bake this in at the core, but in my mind, what this will end up looking like is you get 5% of your tokens out of the gate, but instead of you having to go in and press sell, there's just automatic triggers that happen where when there's a certain amount of volume or when there's a big enough transaction or something like that, let's say someone spikes the price 10% on a really big buy order, maybe instead of that getting MEV sniped by a bot, there's a world where the creator coin gets sold and returned to them instead. So I do think that there's going to be a, for lack of a better term, a black box that gets developed here that makes it a lot easier on the creator to automate their sells here. But I think that we all agree this is the biggest crux of the model, is that, the majority of the revenue comes from the perceived value of the tokens you hold. And if you're expected to have to sell those to capture that revenue, it puts you in a really tough spot that I don't think anyone's quite figured out yet.
Yeah, I don't think creators want the baggage of selling the tokens and then getting
Correct.
the blowback, right? And I think that's maybe one of the bigger challenges for content coins.
You want to scroll down a little bit there? It looks like there's a little bit more back and forth that's probably notable here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Lucas 0x in the replies.
Right there, baby.
He's
Another option is if you just publish your interviews on pods and get paid directly from your community, no coins or baggage. That's the bull case for the
Who replied to
that? Jesse, I think.
What'd
And he
he say?
said, good option too. Thank you, Jesse. Anything to get the content on base, we respect.
Totally.
Man, what an interesting chapter, though. I feel like this is the thing that I always get caught up on, is how big of a topic this whole coins thing is within the crypto crowd, creator crowd, and how not a topic it is anywhere beyond that. And then the decision you as a founder have to make in terms of what horse you're backing and how to just sell that to the rest of the world.
Let's jump to another founder in the media space that's now a little interested in on-chain media. We have Mike from Blockworks here, becoming obsessed with prediction markets and on-chain media. Who are the most interesting people to speak to in this space? Maybe we should get Mike on the pod sometime.
Not a bad take.
Let's run it.
I think to the earlier point, this is just another kind of data point of, it does feel like on-chain media, on-chain creator economy is really starting to become to the forefront of the narrative. And in what form factor that ends up being successful, I think is still up in the air. But as a whole, it just feels almost DeFi-esque, Coop, like 2019 DeFi of like, okay, the primitive's there, people are interested, but we're kind of waiting for that full-on yield farming moment where everyone's going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Bullish
interesting.
distributing media on chain. Remain bullish. What are you pondering?
I'm just pondering the fact that like we use the framing of like on-chain media, bringing content on chain, bringing media on chain. It's not the thing that's going to make it work, though. You know what I mean? Like that's just the outcome. The byproduct is that it just happens to be there, but it's not like the main pitch. You know, I even find myself now when I like explain what I do for a living to real people is like I say I run a crypto record label, and it has this kind of shock value because you have the word crypto at the beginning. But Henry from Privy had this really good statement where he said like you're successful as a crypto business if you don't need to use the prefix crypto to sell your product or your service. And so I think for me, I'm noticing that I'm starting to pull myself in this place of just like, don't lean on the on-chain aspect, don't lean on the crypto aspect of it, just like make it compelling for what it does, not what technology you use on it. Obviously, we've said this a million times, but it's like on-chain media as a topic is like compelling amongst us internally in this little like pocket, but I think it's not the narrative that will resonate with the rest of the world.
I think to the earlier point of like how I pitched that normal podcast creator, it's like there was no on-chain, there was no nothing. It was like fancy receipt, direct to fan patronage model. And like that's what works. I think for us, it's, you know, in the inner circle, I guess, or the people in the echo chamber, like the on-chain media piece, it's cool to just see the thesis or narrative bubble up, I think, as a whole.
My question is like, how long do we need to give ourselves for that narrative to really take hold, right? Because in my mind, it's like, it's probably 2 to 3 years. Like that feels realistic to me. Like it's probably not a 6 to 12 months thing. It's like 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years for it to like really
I think it's an innovation
impactful.
question. It's an iteration innovation question. If someone lands on the model, like it could happen tomorrow, you know, I don't know. I think the pieces are there right now, and it's just an iterative cycle or kind of net new block that we're waiting for.
I like that. Well, I feel like this was a good check-in episode. Like I said, I know that David hasn't been able to join in today, but he's always here with us in spirit. I feel like we got a lot of stuff to look forward to on the next episode. We got the One Confirmation Summit coming up. I'll have a little EDC Vegas recap. I know we got some special guests in the hopper that we're planning on getting on at some point here soon. So
awesome.
Yeah, anything else you guys want to bring up on your end?
No, that's it.
That's it. I think if you're listening to this, thank you for tuning into Not a Cartel. You can find this episode and all other episodes on chain at pods.media/notacartel, where you can collect and support us and get a fancy receipt in return. So thank you so much for listening in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you guys.
Thank you.